She thought this day would break her. Sitting in the courtroom, watching her husband mockingly sign their divorce papers, Naomi felt the weight of every sacrifice she had ever made. But just when it seemed she had lost everything, the judge unfolded an envelope, her late mother's will, and what was inside changed everything. This is HB Vibes, your home for shocking and emotional war stories. Hit like, smash that subscribe, and let's dive into the drama. The morning sun slipped through the tall windows of the courthouse, filling the wooden panels with a golden glow. The air inside, however, was cold, stiff with tension, heavy with unspoken words. Naomi sat at the long wooden table, her hands folded neatly on the pile of papers in front of her. She could feel her palms damp with nervous sweat, but she forced herself to remain composed. This was supposed to be the final day. After months of back and forth, endless hearings, and countless tears shed in private, she would finally close this chapter of her life. Across from her sat Daniel, the man she had once loved deeply. Today, however, there was nothing left of the man she once admired, the man she had supported when he had nothing, the man she had stood by when the world seemed stacked against them. Instead, Daniel lounged back in his chair with a smug grin plastered across his face, like someone who had won a game rather than destroyed a marriage. The judge entered, a calm woman dressed in black robes, carrying a small stack of documents. She sat down, shuffled the papers briefly, and nodded for both parties to begin signing the divorce agreement. Naomi reached for the pen, her fingers trembling slightly. She felt the eyes of the courtroom on her, though she wished desperately to disappear. She bent down, signed her name carefully, and placed the pen back on the table. Daniel, on the other hand, picked up his pen with exaggerated flair. He leaned forward, signed his name in a bold scrawl, and then looked up at Naomi. "Well," he said loud enough for her to hear, his voice laced with mockery, "guess this is the end of your little fairy tale, isn't it?" Naomi's chest tightened, but she kept her gaze fixed on the table. She refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. Daniel chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "You know, Naomi, you always were too serious. Life's a game, and you just don't know how to play it." His laughter echoed in the silence of the room. Even the court clerk shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Naomi with pity. But Naomi stayed silent. She had learned long ago that some battles weren't worth fighting. Daniel thrived on attention. He fed on her reactions. Today, she wouldn't give him any. The judge, however, raised a hand, silencing the mockery. "Mr. Daniel, please keep this proceeding respectful," she said firmly. Daniel only shrugged, still smoking. Naomi exhaled slowly, reminding herself that this was only a moment. Soon, it would be over. Just as the judge prepared to finalize the papers, she paused, picking up a sealed envelope. Her expression softened slightly. "Before we close," the judge said gently, "there is one more matter to address. Naomi, this concerns you. It is the last will and testament of your late mother, recently filed with the court." Naomi's breath caught in her throat. Her mother. Even the sound of that word sent a shiver down her spine. The courtroom suddenly felt smaller, quieter, as the judge carefully opened the envelope. As the judge unfolded the letter inside, Naomi's heart drifted backward, carried on the tide of memory. She was a little girl again, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, watching her mother, Grace, mend a torn dress with steady hands. Grace always had a calm presence about her, even when the world around them seemed unkind. "Naomi," her mother used to say, "don't let anyone tell you your worth. You carry it with you, always." Those words had guided Naomi through school, through struggles, through life itself. But somewhere along the way, during her years with Daniel, she had stopped listening to them. She remembered the long nights when Grace stayed up late sewing clothes for neighbors to earn a little extra money. She remembered how her mother's laughter filled their small home even when there wasn't enough food on the table. And she remembered her mother's eyes on the day Naomi introduced Daniel for the first time, kind, but cautious, as though Grace could see something hidden behind his charm. "You're young," her mother had said afterward, "but promise me, Naomi, promise me you'll never let love blind you to respect." Naomi had brushed it off then, too in love to listen. And now, here she was, sitting in a courtroom, listening to Daniel mock the very end of their marriage. The judge cleared her throat, pulling Naomi out of her memories. "Your mother left behind not just assets, but a letter addressed to you," she said softly. Naomi's heart pounded as the judge began to read. The judge's voice filled the room, gentle yet steady. "My dearest Naomi," she read, "if you are hearing this, it means I am no longer there to hold your hand through the storms. But know this, my child, you were born with strength far greater than any pain you will endure. Naomi felt tears welling in her eyes. She pressed a hand to her mouth to keep from sobbing. Life may not always be fair, the letter continued, and people may mock you when you are at your lowest. But remember, storms always pass. And when they do, you will see that the sun was waiting for you all along. Never bow your head in shame, Naomi. You are my daughter, and you are enough. The words struck Naomi like a lifeline thrown into deep water. She could almost hear her mother's voice, soft yet unyielding, guiding her through the darkness. The judge paused before reading the final portion. Grace has also left behind a property in your name, an old family home that once belonged to your grandparents. She wanted you to have a place that reminded you of where you came from, and where you can always find peace. Naomi gasped softly. She had almost forgotten that house. A small but beautiful home with white shutters and a wide porch where she had played as a child. She remembered running barefoot through its fields, her mother's laughter ringing in the air. Daniel's smirk faltered for the first time. He shifted uncomfortably, clearly surprised. He had walked into the courtroom expecting Naomi to leave broken, empty-handed. Instead, she was walking away with a legacy. The judge folded the letter carefully. Your mother's final wish was that you never doubt your own strength again, she said quietly. Naomi wiped her tears, lifting her head. For the first time in months, she didn't feel crushed under the weight of heartbreak. She felt whole. The divorce was finalized moments later. Naomi signed the last paper with steady hands, no longer trembling. Daniel scribbled his name again, but his confidence had dimmed, his laughter gone. When he tried to lean forward with another sarcastic remark, Naomi simply looked at him, calm and unshaken. There was no anger in her eyes, no bitterness, only quiet strength. Without a word, she gathered her belongings, pressed her mother's letter to her chest, and stood tall as she walked out of the courtroom. Outside, the sun greeted her warmly, as if echoing her mother's words. Naomi inhaled deeply, feeling the air fill her lungs, feeling her spirit lift. A week later, she traveled to the inherited home. The old house stood proudly on its land, surrounded by trees swaying gently in the breeze. Naomi walked up the steps, her hand brushing the worn wooden railing. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. The scent of old wood and distant memories greeted her. She ran her fingers along the walls, remembering the laughter of her childhood, the safety she had once felt here. For the first time in years, Naomi felt free. Free from Daniel's cruelty, free from mockery, free from the chains of a broken marriage. She wasn't starting from nothing. She was starting from strength. Standing at the window, sunlight pouring across her face, Naomi whispered softly, "Thank you, Mama, for everything." And in that quiet moment, she knew she was ready. Ready to rebuild, to heal, and to create a future her mother would be proud of. The story of Naomi's heartbreak ended not in despair, but in resilience. For a while Daniel had mocked her in her lowest moment, it was Naomi who rose stronger, carrying her mother's wisdom like a torch into the days ahead. If you felt the heartbeat of this story, give it a like, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to HB Vibes, where every story carries a lesson for the soul.